We are going to talk about a man who is both a stage theorist and a developmental psychologist. This man is Jean Piaget. Piaget actually started by working with Binet when they were developing intelligence tests, and he became very interested in the development of children because he noticed when children were answering questions wrong on the test, they very often gave the same reasons for why they were answering the questions wrong. Piaget began to look at schemas. A schema or schemata is a way in which we see the world. It is, as I've defined here, a mental mold into which we pour our experiences. So it is our paradigm or the way that we look at the world. There are two issues that we deal with when we deal with schema. One of them is assimilation and the other is accommodation. Assimilation is when, through experience, we walk through the world and we pull things into our existing schemata. Accommodation is when we actually have to change our schemata in order to fit a new circumstance that we see. There is a very good example of this in the Barron's Review book, and the example is that a young boy gets a pair of cowboy boots, let's say for Christmas or for his birthday. And so he puts those cowboy boots on, and he's walking through the world, and he now has an understanding. His schema is that young boys wear cowboy boots. And as he's walking around, he sees other kids with cowboy boots on, and everything's fine. He sees his neighbor with cowboy boots, and he assimilates that in. And he sees another kid down the street wearing cowboy boots, and he assimilates that into his schema, his understanding of cowboy boots. And then he goes to the grocery store, and he sees a man that's actually wearing cowboy boots. His schema is that cowboy boots are for little boys, so now he's got to accommodate his current schema in order to understand that cowboy boots are not only for little boys, they're also for men. And of course, this whole pattern will be repeated when he sees a woman wearing cowboy boots or cowgirl boots. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development. He's concerned with the way children think. So we're not talking about physical development here. We're talking strictly about cognitive or their mental development. One statement that I want to make before we go through these 4 stages is we need to come down here to the term maturational development. When we talk about maturational development, we are talking about biological growth processes that enable orderly changes in behavior that are relatively uninfluenced by experience. What that means is, if you think about Einstein, for instance, arguably the smartest man to walk the planet in the last 1,000 years. Albert Einstein, at age 2, could not have come up with his theories of relativity. Okay? He couldn't have done that at age 4. He could not have done that at age 6. But by the time he gets to a certain age, it is very possible for him to fully be able to do that. Okay? What that means basically is that the learning is there. Okay? He will be able to, through experience, understand science at some point, but he can't understand it before he is biologically ready to understand it. And that's the difference between maturation and experience. We can think of it this way. Maturation kind of sets the basic course of development, and experience adjusts it. Okay? If you are trying to potty train your child and you try to do that at age 1, you're not going to be successful because the maturational development is not there. If you try to potty train your child at age 2 or 3, whenever the maturational process is there and it's ready, experience then, the experience of being potty trained, will actually be successful. We're going to move our way through Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development. The first is what we call the sensory motor stage. During this stage, babies take in the world through their sensory and motor interactions with objects, through looking, hearing, touching, mouthing, grasping. All of these different things, if you look at the title of the section, it is sensory, the senses, okay? And motoring, moving from place to place throughout the world. Reality to a baby at this age is what is right in front of them, okay? Which brings us to a major challenge for children that are going through the sensory motor stage, which, by the way, takes place from birth to 2 years. Object permanence is one of the major challenges. When we say object permanence, we are talking about the awareness that objects continue to exist when they are not perceived. In other words, when a young child covers their eyes, they make the assumption that because they can't see you, you don't exist. That's why peekaboo is such an exciting game for a child that is less than 2 years of age. It's almost as if you disappear from reality and then come back. So generally, by the time a child passes through this sensory motor stage, they understand that objects do continue to exist when they are not perceived or seen. Okay? The second stage of Piaget is going to be what's called the pre-operational stage. This pre-operational stage takes place between the ages of 2 and 6 to 7 years of age. Again, it depends on the maturational development of the individual child. But during this stage, a child learns to use language. That's going to be one of the key issues of this stage, but they don't yet comprehend the mental operations of concrete logic. Okay? That's a mouthful, and basically, if we look at these issues down here, that may explain things a little bit. Some of the big challenges for children during this time period is that children are extremely what is called egocentric. Egocentric means they really only see the world through their eyes, and they don't have a theory of mind of other people. In fact, it's almost impossible for a child at this age to jump out of themselves and to understand or to perceive things from another person's point of view. Let me give you a couple examples of this. Imagine having the following conversation with a 3-year-old. Do you have a brother? Yes. What is his name? Joey. Does Joey have a brother? No. The egocentric 3-year-old understands that he has a brother, but does not understand that that means that his brother has a brother as well. As a second example, imagine 2 children on a seesaw. The girl in the pink sees an ice cream truck and decides to get up and run away. She's completely egocentric and has no idea the jeopardy that will put the little boy in. The third stage is the concrete operational stage. The concrete operational stage takes place between the ages of 8 and 12 years of age. This is going to be an important age, and again, it's going to vary some in terms of age, but it's going to be an important stage. In this stage of cognitive development, children gain mental operations that enable them to think logically about concrete events. What they can't do is think in an abstract manner. One of the big challenges for children in this particular area is a challenge of conservation. Okay? Conservation, basically by definition, conservation is the idea that things stay the same numerically and they stay the same in terms of area and volume, even if their shape changes. So if I showed a child in this particular stage between the ages of 8 and 12, okay, I showed a child 2 beakers, one upside down and one right side up. And I showed them first both the same way so they could see that the water was actually at the same level. And then I flipped one of them upside down and I asked them which beaker has more water in it. The child will very likely pick this one for 2 reasons. Number 1, the water level is higher. And number 2, the top of this particular beaker is bigger. And the child, for social reasons, is used to looking at human beings and focusing on the face. Okay? Same thing will happen if one beaker is taller than the other. They will very often say that the water inside is actually more in terms of volume if they have not mastered this concept of conservation. Okay? Which again is that when shapes change, it doesn't do anything to the actual volume or number of whatever item you're talking about that's inside those shapes. The last of the 4 stages is what's called the formal operational stage. The formal operational stage is going to come on to children sometime around the age of 11 or 12. And during this stage, a person is able to solve abstract problems. This is abstract thinking. This is the kind of thinking where I would say, how would a human being look different if they lived on Mars? Or how would a human being look different if there was no such thing as the sun? Or if the earth was completely dark, or if humans lived in caves? You can think of all different kinds of scenarios here. But the basic idea is that during the formal operational stage, a child is able to take their experiences and their schema and what they understand, and they're able to project that on situations that are not yet even reality. So when we look at Piaget, Piaget was very concerned, again, he's a stage theorist, okay? He believed a child had to go through the sensory motor stage before they could get to the concrete operational stage, and that things always progressed in this particular manner, okay? And that children had a series of kind of aha moments as they went through here, as they moved from one stage to the other. He was concerned mostly with this concept of cognitive development.